Shalom, 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 Israel. This is Captain Paul Israel from Kingdom Builders of Israel LLC, and today's class topic is going to be on Cornelius was a Hebrew Israelite, Part 2. Again, Israel, today's class topic is going to be on Cornelius was a Hebrew Israelite, Part 2. Okay, Israel, so this is going to be a good lesson to discuss on how Cornelius was a Hebrew Israelite. Okay, so this is a continuation on where we left off on the understanding of Cornelius was a Hebrew Israelite part 1 lesson. So this is the second half of it. So we about to go into these actual Bible verses to justify the stance on Cornelius being a Hebrew Israelite instead of being a so-called white man. Okay, and also we're going to crush down the Christianity lies that's been pushed through the four corners of the earth on telling their members in the Christian faith that Cornelius was a so-called white man. Okay, and that's a lie. Okay, so we're going to promote this Hebrew truth on Cornelius being a Hebrew Israelite. Okay, so Israel, get out your pen and notepad, get ready to take your notes. We're going to start out, of course, in the book of Acts chapter 10 verse 1, and then get the understanding of this understanding on Cornelius being a Hebrew Israelite. Okay, so we're going to start out in the book of Acts chapter 10 verse 1. It says, there was a certain man in Caesarea called Cornelius, a centurion of the band called the Italian band. Okay, so there was a certain man in Caesarea called Cornelius, and we got the understanding in of course in the part 1 lesson of Cornelius was a Hebrew Israelite. We got the understanding that when it says Caesarea, it's talking about Caesarea Maritima. Okay, so Cornelius was a man staying and living in Caesarea Maritima. When it just says Caesarea, it's talking about Caesarea Maritima. Okay, it says there was a certain man in Caesarea Maritima called Cornelius, a centurion of the band called the Italian band. Okay, so when it says a centurion, that's going into like a Roman soldier. Okay, a Roman soldier that had rank, like a commander. Okay, that Cornelius had certain men that was under him. Okay, so we're going to look up this word centurion. What does it actually mean? Even though we already brought it out in general just now, that it means a Roman soldier, like a commanding soldier of the Roman army. Okay, so we're going to go to this link right here. And this is the dictionary understanding from Cambridge. Okay, to get the understanding what a centurion is. Okay, as you can see, it says centurion. It says an officer in the army of ancient Rome who was responsible for 100 soldiers. It was basically a ranking position of an officer in the army of the ancient Roman Empire who was responsible for 100 soldiers. Okay, it could have been 100 soldiers or more. Okay, but again, a centurion is basically like a commander in the Roman Empire. Okay, that's what Cornelius was. Okay, Cornelius was a commander in the Roman Empire. That's what it's getting into. Okay, and it says, basically it says, there was a certain man in Caesarea called Cornelius, a centurion or a commander of the Roman Empire. That's what it's saying. Or a commander in the Roman Empire. That's what it's saying when it says a centurion of the band called the Italian band. We got to get the understanding what it means about this Italian band. What is this getting into? So we go to the definition of the Italian band. Of course, this is King James Bible Online.org website to give the definition of the Italian band understanding. It says the name of the Roman cohort to which Cornelius belonged. It says Acts chapter 10 verse 1. It says so called probably because it consisted of men recruited in Italy. So when it says the Italian band is going into men being recruited as Roman soldiers in Italy. So that's what it says, Italian band. So we go back to Acts chapter 10 verse 1, it said, there was a certain man in Caesarea Maritima called Cornelius, because Cornelius was a Hebrew Israelite, a centurion, talking about he was a Roman commander of the Roman army, okay, of the band called the Italian band. So Cornelius had recruited certain men that was living in Italy, okay? But as you can see, men in the Roman Empire traveled to different areas, because in Caesarea Maritima, they had a Roman military base located in Caesarea Maritima. Okay, so this is why Cornelius was stationed out there in Caesarea Maritima. Okay, so the Roman Empire had different military bases in the world. Okay, so Caesarea Maritima was a location that the Roman Empire had a military base located at, which is going into that Roman army military base understanding. And Cornelius was a commander of that particular army unit in Caesarea Maritima. Cornelius had men recruited from Italy, right, to be stationed out in Caesarea Maritima. Okay, and Cornelius had rank and position to be what? A commander over those men that was recruited in Italy. Okay, but they were stationed out in Caesarea Maritima, okay, which is near that Mediterranean Sea, and also Caesarea Maritima is located in the northern part of Israel understanding, okay, dealing with, of course, primarily the northern kingdom of Israel understanding. Okay, so now we got the understanding of that. Now we're going to go to the book of Acts chapter 10 verse 2. A devout man, and one that feared Elohim with all his house, which gave much alms to the people, and prayed to Elohim always. That's what it says. It says always, talking about always. Okay, so it says a devout man. So it says Cornelius was a devout man, meaning he was just. Okay, he was a righteous man, and one that feared Elohim with all his house. So again, Cornelius feared the Most High because he was a Hebrew Israelite, and Cornelius was keeping Yahweh's commandments, because in order for you to have fear of the Most High, you have to be keeping his commandments. It says, and one that feared Elohim with all his house. So that means he had his wife fearing the Most High by keeping the commandments. That means he also had his children fearing the Most High as well, okay, by keeping Yahweh's laws, statutes, and commandments. So Cornelius was a Hebrew Israelite in the truth, right, promoting righteousness by having his house, his foundation, keeping Yahweh's commandments. Okay, it says, which gave much alms to the people and prayed to Elohim always. So when it says which gave much alms to the people, that's talking about Cornelius was giving to the poor, meaning he gave food to the poor, right? He fed the poor. And then also he gave money to the poor. Okay. So let's look up this word alms and see what it means. Okay, we're going to look up this word alms to see what it means, just to get the understanding. It says alms, right? Alms. It says something such as money or food given freely to relieve the poor. So Cornelius was a righteous man. He was giving something such as money or food given freely to relieve the poor. So he was giving food and money to the poor. That's what it says, which gave much alms to the people. So Cornelius was a righteous man who gave to the poor, okay, whether it was food or money, okay. And it says, I'm going to prove that when it says one that feared Elohim with all his house. When it says one that feared, that's talking about keeping the commandments. Cornelius was keeping the commandments of the Most High Yah. This is the book of Psalms, chapter 111, verse 10, to prove that when it says the fear of the Most High is keeping the commandments. Psalms chapter 111, verse 10. It says, the fear of Yahweh is the beginning of wisdom. A good understanding have all they that do his commandments. His praise endureth forever. So it says, the fear of the Most High is the beginning of wisdom. A good understanding have all they that do his commandments. So Cornelius, who was a Hebrew Israelite, was keeping Yahweh's commandments. That's why he had fear of the Most High Yah, because he was what? Keeping Yahweh's commandments. Okay. And also, this is another point too to prove that Cornelius was a Hebrew Israelite keeping Yahweh's commandments, because this is another proof to prove that only Hebrew Israelites can fear the Most High, because they are the ones that can apply Yahweh's commandments in this context of understanding when we go into this Bible lesson understanding. So fearing the Most High is an application only for the children of Israel at this moment of time understanding, because of course in general Yahshua the Mashiach is not reigning on earth at this time for the other nations who are considered Gentiles to be keeping Yahweh's commandments. Okay, so for right now we are applying the understanding whenever we see the fear in the Most High, keeping his commandments is basically an application only for the children of Israel and not all other races of people like they want to paint in these Christian churches' religions. Okay, the Bible is going to make it clear that only the Hebrew Israelites are only able to what? Keep the commandments of the Most High Yah. Okay, in this context, okay, 2nd Ezra chapter 3 verse 36. This is a book that's in the Apocrypha, okay, that was taken out of the original King James Version Bible. So this is in 2nd Ezra chapter 3 verse 36, and we know Ezra is the Greco-Latin name for the prophet Ezra that is mentioned in the Old Testament. So Ezra is this actual prophet that's being referred to as Ezra in the Apocrypha. Okay, so 2nd Ezra chapter 3 verse 36, and we know, of course, in general, 2nd Ezra is technically an Old Testament understanding book. Okay, 2nd Ezra chapter 3 verse 36, it says, thou shalt find that Israel by name have kept thy precepts, but not the heathen. Whoa, wait a minute. You see this, Israel? It says, thou shalt find that Israel by name have kept thy precepts, but not the heathen. So only the Hebrew Israelites in history only kept the commandments. And it says, but not the heathen. So the other nations, who are those Gentile nations that are not Hebrew Israelites, there's no record that's found that they was keeping Yahweh's commandments throughout history. There's no record. Okay, so only the Israelites was keeping thy precepts. And when it says precepts, is going into commandments. Okay, let's prove that the precept word is talking about commandments. Okay, we're going to zoom in a little bit. So it says the precept definition. It says, in general sense, any commandment or order intended as an authoritative rule of action, but applied particularly to commands respecting moral conduct. The 10 commandments are so many precepts for the regulation of our moral conduct. And then it says, in law, a commandment or mandate in writing. So again, the scholars know that when it says precept, it's going into commandments. Okay, so when we go back to 2nd Ezra, in 2nd Ezra chapter 3 verse 36, it says, thou shalt find that Israel by name have kept thy precepts, but not the heathen. So when it says, thou shalt find that Israel by name have kept thy commandments, but not the heathen, because the commandments were only given to the children of Israel to keep by Moses. Okay, but not the heathen, because the other nations were not given Yahweh's commandments to keep. Okay, again, when we get under Yahshua's reign, the Black Messiah's reign on earth, that's when the other nations are going to be keeping Yahweh's commandments. Okay? But right now, the commandments are only being kept and found through history only to be kept by the Hebrew Israelites. Okay? So now we got the understanding of that. Okay? So now we go back to Acts chapter 10 verse 2. It says Cornelius was a devout man and one that feared Elohim with all his house, because Cornelius was a Hebrew Israelite that kept the commandments of the Most High Yah. He feared the Most High Yah, right? And he was a righteous man. That's what it says, a devout man. Okay? In order for him to be a righteous man, he had to be keeping the commandments. And now we know through history of this Bible that only the Hebrew Israelites were been found keeping Yahweh's commandments. So that would make Cornelius a Hebrew Israelite, okay, which gave much alms to the people. So Cornelius donated to the poor and needy, okay, because he was a righteous man, and prayed to the Most High always. So he prayed to the Most High always. Because why is he able to pray to the Most High always? Because he is a Hebrew Israelite. Okay, the Most High is only dealing with the Hebrew Israelites. Point blank, period. Okay, so this is a cut to the Christianity faith, talking about Cornelius was a so-called white man. Okay, that's a lie. Okay, so this is a cut to the Christianity faith. Okay, we're going to let this Bible be true and every man a liar. Okay, we read it in the book of 2nd Esdras, where only the Hebrew Israelites were only been found keeping Yahweh's commandments. Okay, only the Hebrew Israelites are only been found keeping Yahweh's commandments, but not the other nations, but not the heathen. Okay, but not the heathen, meaning but not the other nations. So only the Hebrew Israelites were found keeping Yahweh's commandments. Okay? So I'm going to keep cutting you up, you Christians, with your lies. Okay? Acts chapter 10 verse 3. This is, of course, Cornelius seeing something in a vision. It says, he saw in a vision, evidently about the 9th hour of the day, an angel of the Most High coming into him and saying unto him, Cornelius. So now Cornelius, the Hebrew Israelite, is now seeing a vision, right, around the time, around 3 p.m. Okay, so when you see, it says he saw a vision evidently about the 9th hour, that's going into 3 p.m. time frame, understanding. So Cornelius saw in a vision evidently about the time of course, 3 p.m. of the day, an angel of the Most High, or the angel of Elohim, coming to visit him. That's what it said. Coming into him is talking about coming to visit him. Okay. And saying unto Cornelius. So now you have a holy angel of the Most High coming to talk to Cornelius at 3 p.m. in daytime. Okay. And evidently it's appearing to Cornelius as a vision of the Most High sending an angel unto him to talk to him at 3 p.m. in the daytime. Okay. And this is what the holy angel is about to have a conversation with Cornelius about. That's what it said. And saying unto him, Cornelius. So now the holy angel is calling Cornelius by name. Okay. This is what this is getting into, Israel. Okay. So this is the book of Acts chapter 10 verse 4. It says, and when he looked on him, he was afraid and said, what is it, Lord? And he said unto him, thy prayers and thy alms are come up for a memorial before Elohim. You see this, Israel? So now the holy angel is talking to Cornelius. And of course, the holy angel has not given Cornelius his name. Okay. But we do recognize that Cornelius, the Hebrew Israelite, is having a conversation with an holy angel of the Most High Yah. So now when Cornelius is looking upon this holy angel, he's now terrified because this is shocking unto him to be conversing back and forth with a holy angel of the Most High. That's why he said, "What is it, Lord?" And the angel said unto him, that's what it said, and he said unto him, this is talking about the angel has said unto Cornelius, "Thy prayers and thy alms are come up for a memorial before Elohim." So now the angel of the Most High is now telling Cornelius that your prayers and your righteous deeds by you giving to the poor and needy, right? You being a just man, right? And you're constantly reverencing the Most High has now became a memory or a memorial to the Most High to say, hey, this brother right here, he's a righteous brother. Talking about Cornelius. So the Most High say, hey, so he's saying the Most High is not recognizing your righteousness, Cornelius, because you're a righteous man. You're different than a lot of other Hebrew Israelites out here, okay? Because you have the right spirit. Okay, so now I'm going to do this for you, Cornelius. That's what the angel is now going to converse back to Cornelius about, because the Most High is dealing with Cornelius. That's why the angel of the Most High is now saying, "Thy prayers and thy alms are come up for a memorial before Elohim," because the Most High sees Cornelius' righteous deeds that he is doing throughout the earth. Okay, understanding. Okay, so now this is somewhat like a blessing scenario or an order that this holy angel is now going to tell Cornelius about or what needs to be done, okay, by him. Okay, so we're going to go to the actual next verse. Okay, Acts chapter 10 verse 5. So now this is a message that the holy angel is going to give to Cornelius to do something. Okay, Acts chapter 10 verse 5. "And now send men to Joppa and call for one Simon, whose surname is Peter." So now this holy angel is now telling Cornelius to go send some men to Joppa and call for Simon, whose surname is Peter. So call for Peter to come visit you. Okay, to Caesarea Maritima, of course, in general. So Acts chapter 10 verse 5. "And now send men to Joppa and call for one Simon, whose surname is Peter." So again, the holy angel is now telling Cornelius to go send some men to Joppa to get Peter, who is the head apostle of Christ. He is one of those 12 disciples of the Black Messiah. He's now saying to Cornelius, this holy angel is now saying to Cornelius to go send some men to Joppa to send for Peter, the head disciple, to come visit you in Caesarea Maritima. Okay, that's what the holy angel is telling Cornelius. Okay, and we got to get the understanding where this location of Joppa is located at. And of course, Joppa is located in the southern part of Israel, understanding, but it sits up like on the borderline between the northern kingdom of Israel and the southern kingdom of Israel. It's like on the borderline, but the primary area is on, of course, the southern part of Israel, understanding, in the southern kingdom territory, but it sits on that Mediterranean sea line. Okay, so we're going to actually get the actual location. Okay, this is from a Christianity.com website, of course, but again, this is only scholar level to show where Joppa is located at. Okay, so this is not a belief system. This is based on a scholaristic understanding pertaining to location of Joppa. Okay, so this is just a scholar understanding on where Joppa is located at. Okay, so it says, the title says, where is Joppa in the Bible? Okay, it says Joppa in the Bible, also referred to by its Hebrew name, Japho, in some translations, was an important Judean seaport on the Mediterranean coast, located about 40 miles northwest of Jerusalem. It says Joppa was the port where timber and supplies arrived from Lebanon to build the first temple under King Solomon, and the second temple after the Israelites returned from exile. It was also the city where Jonah boarded a ship for Tarshish to flee from the presence of the Most High, and the city where Peter received the famous vision that led him to expand his ministry. It says today Joppa, known as Jaffa, is located in the southern region of Tel Aviv, Israel. So again, it's located in the southern region of Tel Aviv. So like I said earlier, it's located in the southern part of Israel understanding. That's where Joppa is located at. Okay. Okay, Israel, that pretty much explains where Joppa is located at, but I just wanted to bring that out. It's located in the southern region of Tel Aviv, Israel. It's located in the southern part of Israel understanding. Okay. So that's what Acts chapter 10 verse 5, where we have the word Joppa is located at, okay, in the southern part of Israel understanding. Now we're going to go to the book of Acts chapter 10 verse 6. Now the angel of the Most High is going to tell Cornelius where Simon Peter is going to be located at in Joppa, okay. Acts chapter 10 verse 6. It says the angel of the Most High is now talking to Cornelius. Of course, this is getting into the holy angel talking to Cornelius to explain where Peter was dwelling at as far as doing his visit, because Peter was a disciple of Yeshua the Mashiach, and he was going to different areas in Israel to preach the ministry of the Black Messiah. And Peter, who was one of the 12 apostles of Yeshua the Mashiach, Peter was visiting a certain brother that lived in Joppa territory near the Mediterranean Sea location. So the holy angel is talking to Cornelius to explain that this is the location where you need to send your men to see Peter, because Peter is with a gentleman named Simon the Tanner, okay? And Simon the Tanner living quarters is near the Mediterranean Sea location, and he lives in Joppa. Okay, and Joppa is a location near the Mediterranean Sea location, located in the borderline area of the southern kingdom and the northern kingdom of Israel territories. So this is where the holy angel is now going to tell Cornelius where to send his men to come get Peter, the disciple, to now come see Cornelius in Caesarea Maritima location. Okay, so this is the holy angel speaking to Cornelius. Okay, Acts chapter 10 verse 6. He lodgeth with one Simon, a tanner, whose house is by the seaside. He shall tell thee what thou oughtest to do. Now the holy angel is telling Cornelius that Peter is dwelling amongst a brother named Simon, who is a tanner. And a tanner profession is going into a person that makes leather, okay, out of animal skin. Okay, so let's prove that tanner is a profession that makes certain clothing out of animal skin. Okay, we're going to prove that understanding. Okay, we're going to prove that understanding. Okay, this is the definition of tanner. Okay, the word tanner. Let me zoom in a little bit. Okay, it says tanner on the as far. Okay, it says tanner. Let me scroll down. It says tanner. A tanner is someone whose job is making leather from animal skins. So that's the profession of a tanner, that makes leather or clothing from animal skins. Okay, so this is what profession that Simon the tanner had. Okay, this is a person that Peter was dwelling amongst during his missionary journeys. He was dwelling at a gentleman's house who has been referred to as Simon the Tanner. Okay, so Peter is dwelling amongst another Hebrew Israelite named Simon the Tanner, or going by Simon a Tanner. Okay, because Simon was a person that made leather out of animals' skin, which entailed, of course, in general, to killing the animals, of course, in general, and to making those dead animal skin to be formed to be a form of clothing. Okay, so that's what this is getting into, Israel. And I'm gonna explain the reason why Simon the Tanner house was by the seaside, meaning his house was near that Mediterranean Sea. That's what the holy angel is telling Cornelius, that Simon the Tanner's house is located by the Mediterranean Sea. When it says seaside, it's talking about the Mediterranean Sea. Okay, and let's prove to get the history on this Simon the Tanner, who was a Hebrew Israelite. Of course, Simon the Tanner's profession was not looked upon as high regard in the Hebrew custom or the Hebrew culture, okay, because it was an unclean type of work to do, because you're dealing with dead animals, okay, because you're taking the skin off the dead animals to now make it to a form of clothing. So the Hebrew Israelite culture or custom kind of shined away from that understanding as far as being a good job or good occupation to do. Okay, Simon the Tanner. Okay, this is on, of course, Wikipedia. It says Simon the Tanner. Let me go back up. It says Simon the Tanner, who appears in the Acts of Apostles book of the New Testament, had a house in Jaffa where St. Peter stayed during his missionary activities of the early Christian faith. So it says St. Peter stayed during his missionary activities of the early Christian faith. It's talking about the early ministry that was going into the ministry about the Black Messiah. Okay, so instead of saying early Christian faith, we'll say early disciple faith about Yahshua the Mashiach, the Black Messiah. Okay, so it don't cause confusion to believe that it's talking about the modernized Christian faith of today. It's not talking about that. It's talking about the Black Messiah's ministry, okay, of the disciple understanding. Okay, he is believed to be an example of the early Christians embracing people of all professions. So instead of saying Christians, we're going to say disciples. Okay, the disciples of Yahshua the Mashiach, the Black Messiah. So it's going into Peter is believed to be an example of the early disciples embracing people of all professions, because again, the Jews consisting of those three tribes, Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, they had formed the ideology to shun certain individuals that was a part of certain professions that was contrary to the Jew custom understanding. Okay, so Simon the Tanner had a profession that was shunned at, meaning it was looked upon as low regard in the Hebrew custom. Okay, because the tanners dealt with dead animals. So Peter, who was one of the 12 apostles of Yahshua the Mashiach, was more open into acceptance of the understanding of his profession to still say, yes, you're still righteous, meaning your belief stance believes on the Messiah. Your stance is believing in these commandments. So Peter and the other disciples, they did not shun certain people that had different occupation contrary to the Jew custom understanding. So the scribes, the Pharisees, and Sadducees, they shunned people based upon their job titles. Okay, so the disciples of Yahshua the Mashiach, right, they roll with a different type of spirit. They was going basically on the heart of man, you know, what their belief system was based upon the Bible understanding. Okay, so long as the men came with the right spirit, keeping the commandments, believing the Black Messiah, they was okay in the book, okay, in general, to be a follower of Yahshua the Mashiach. Okay, that's what spirit Peter and the other apostles was rolling with, contrary to, of course, those scribes, Pharisees, and Sadducees. Okay, they was going off another understanding of the wrong type of spirit to have. Okay, it says, it says, he is believed to be an example of the early Christians embracing people of all professions. The events at his house are interpreted as leading to the early followers of Yeshua opening up their ranks also to the Gentiles. When it says to the Gentiles, it's talking about the northern kingdom of Israel, the 10 tribes of Israel. Okay, when it says Gentiles in this context, it's talking about those 10 tribes who were a part of the northern kingdom of Israel, understanding that was being classified as being Gentiles. It says, after starting as a Jewish movement, the traditional site of Simon's house is in the old city of Jaffa, now part of Tel Aviv, Yafo municipality in Israel. So again, this explains what we established earlier, that Jaffa or Joppa is located in the area what they call in modern day time Tel Aviv, and okay, of course, is located in the southern part of Israel, understanding. Okay, but again, there's an establishment of that understanding. Okay, an establishment of that understanding. Okay, so we scroll down. Also, too, it says, Yeshua took Matthew, a tax collector by profession, because Matthew was a tax collector. And we already established earlier in the other lesson that tax collectors were deemed to be not good people based upon their profession, because they were working for the government, and the government at that time was the Roman Empire. Okay, so it says Yeshua took Matthew, a tax collector by profession, because Yeshua didn't look at his profession as saying Matthew was a bad person. He looked at the heart of Matthew being a good person, believing in the Hebrew truth. Okay, Yeshua took Matthew, a tax collector by profession, as one of his 12 disciples. So Matthew was one of Yeshua the Messiah's 12 disciples. Tax collectors were disdained by the Jews in general, like I established earlier in other lessons, that the Jews, which consists of those 3 tribes, Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, they looked down on people that took on government jobs. Okay, it says, because they served the Roman Empire, not their Elohim. So the Jews looked at certain Hebrew brothers as being traitors, because they was working for the government, right? But in general, they looked at them, hey, y'all serving the Roman Empire because y'all taking on these government jobs, right? That's what the Jews, which consist of the southern kingdom of Israel, Judah, Benjamin, Levi, they were looking down on Hebrew brothers taking on government jobs, because it was coming off as if they were serving the Roman Empire and not the Most High Yah. Okay, which is not true. They just had jobs working in regular 9 to 5 to take care of themselves as men. Okay, but that doesn't mean they wasn't serving the Most High. Okay, but again, the Jews, which consist of those scribes, Pharisees, and Sadducees, understanding, and also consisting of those 3 tribes, Judah, Benjamin, Levi, they was forming doctrines that was not biblical. Okay, it says the tanner's profession was equally disdained by the people of Israel, because they dealt with dead animals and urine. You see this? You see this? It says the tanner's profession was equally disdained by the people of Israel, because they dealt with the dead animals and urine. So again, we're not going to read no more of this understanding, but the point I want to make is the tanner's profession was equally disdained by the people of Israel, because the Hebrew Israelites in general had a disdainment towards people that took on the profession dealing with dead animals and urine. And of course, being a tanner, you're dealing with dead animals, because you have to skin away the skin off these animals. Okay, so you can have some type of form of clothing. Okay, so this profession was an unclean profession. Okay, being a tanner was an unclean profession. Okay, it was not a clean type of job. Okay, it was you're gonna get dirty, and it's very smelly because you're dealing with dead animals, and the odor of this particular profession is very nasty. Being a tanner has a bad odor effect, okay, because you're dealing with dead animals. Okay, it says tanner. This is going to explain why This is going to explain why Simon the Tanner was positioning located near the seaside, the Mediterranean Sea. And also the tanners as a profession, they're mainly dwelling amongst close to the ocean water based upon the odor effect given off from the dye products that they use to change the coloring of the particular skin that they use for clothing, for leather products. So it's the reason why they're near the seaside area. It says the only reference to a tanner are in Acts 9 verse 43, Acts chapter 10 verse 6, and Acts chapter 10 verse 32. The Jews looked upon tanning as an undesirable occupation, and well they might, for at best it was occupied with unpleasant odors, which we established earlier that tanning had unpleasant odors and unattractive sights, because again it became an unattractive sight to look upon being a tanner because you're dealing with dead animals. Okay, it says if not even ceremonially unclean, because it was an unclean profession. Okay, because you're dealing with dead animals. We can imagine that Simon the Tanner found among the disciples of Yeshua a fellowship which had been denied him before, because again Simon the Tanner could not fellowship with those other Jews, which consist of the tribe of Judah, Benjamin, Levi understanding, but primarily consisting of those scribes, Pharisees, and Sadducees understanding, because they did not want to fellowship with people that had unclean professions. Okay, but Peter, who was one of the 12 apostles of Yeshua, was willing to dwell with this man based upon his heart being purified according to Yahweh's righteousness. Okay, see, the disciples of Yeshua judge men and women based upon their belief system, not necessarily upon their profession or work. Okay, it said Peter made the way still easier for Simon by choosing his house as his abode while staying in Joppa. Simon's house was by the seashore, as it is true of the tanners along the Syrian coast today, so that the foul-smelling liquors from the vats can be drawn off with the least nuisance, and so that the salt water may be easily accessible of washing the skins during the tanning process. So what it's saying is that the foul-smelling liqueurs, or the odor that's coming from the skin from these dead animals, is very foul odor. So being by the ocean water, it allows the smell to drift off away near the ocean water coast. And it says, and also the vats. The vats is going into like a containment of water, which entail dye products. So this is used to put the skin in these vats, which is containers, to change the coloring of the certain skin, which is going into the leather. So that's why you may have certain leathers may be different colors, but they dip the skin of the animals in these vats or these containers to change the coloring of the leather. So all this has a certain type of smell going on. So it's best for these particular vats or tanners to be positioned near the ocean water area. It says, so that the foul-smelling liquors from the vats can be drawn off with the least nuisance, and so that the salt water may be easily accessible for washing the skins during the tanning process. These tanneries are very unpretentious affairs, usually consisting of 1 or 2 small rooms and a courtyard. It says, within are the vats made either of stone, masonry, plaster within and without, or cut out of the solid rock. Okay, we don't have to really read no more of that. But as you can see, these vats had containment of the salt water, which was used to do a washing, of course, of these animal skins that need to be cleansed and also need to be soaked in certain products as far as to be changed the coloring of. So that's why you have different colored products associated with certain type of leathers. Okay, so this is what the tanning process had to entail. So mainly a lot of the tanners in profession stayed near the sea coast. Okay, so this is why Simon the tanner was located near the seaside, which is going into the Mediterranean Sea, because based upon his profession primarily. Okay, so that's what it's getting into. Okay. And of course, in general, in the Mosaic law understanding, Leviticus chapter 5, verse 2, Leviticus chapter 5, verse 2 says, or if a soul touch any unclean thing, okay, he also shall be unclean and guilty. Okay, so again, it was considered to be unclean to be touching dead animals. So the scribes, the Pharisees, and Sadducees was looking at this particular law right here and saying, hey, if you take a profession dealing with unclean things, dead bodies of these animals as a profession, then you're an unclean person. So we don't want no dealings with you. That's what the scribes, the Pharisees, and Sadducees was coming with. But of course, Yahshua's disciples was rolling with a different type of spirit that did not judge a man based on his profession. Okay. But this is what the scribes, the Pharisees, and Sadducees was coming with the laws of Moses, judging a man based on his job, okay, which was wrong to do. So now that we got the understanding that Acts chapter 10, verse 6 is going into Peter staying with one Simon a tanner, whose house is by the seaside, which we know that's talking about the Mediterranean Sea location, he shall tell thee what thou oughtest to do. Okay, because Simon the tanner profession was making leather, okay, as far as clothing is concerned. Okay, it's not a clean profession to do, but it was a job, an occupation. Okay, so now we go to the book of Acts chapter 10, verse 7. And when the angel which spake unto Cornelius was departed, he called 2 of his household servants, and a devout soldier of them that waited on him continually. So again, when the angel of the Most High departed from speaking from Cornelius, because Cornelius was a Hebrew Israelite, and of course the Most High Yah sends his holy angels to talk directly with his people who are the Hebrew Israelites in person. Okay, because the Most High has a personal relationship with the Hebrew Israelites, especially those that are hearkening unto his commandments. And Cornelius was keeping Yahweh's commandments. And when the angel which spake unto Cornelius was departed, he called 2 of his household servants. So now Cornelius is now going to call upon his 2 household servants, because Cornelius was a wealthy man. He had servants. Okay, so he called 2 of his servants, and he also called on a devout soldier. So he called on one of his Roman soldier, right? And he also called 2 of his servants of his own personal household to go to get Peter. Right? This is what he's saying. 2 of his household servants and a devout soldier was at his residence waiting on him to speak to them. Cornelius called unto his 2 servants, right? And also he called on one of his highly calibered soldier, okay, that was under him, called unto him. And this is what he's going to explain to these 3 men. Okay, in the next verse. Acts chapter 10, verse 8. And when he had declared all these things unto them, he sent them to Joppa. Now Cornelius is explaining to his 2 household servants and also to one of his soldiers who was a Roman officer. Now he's explaining to these 3 men, you have to go to Joppa to get Peter, who was the disciple of Yahshua the Mashiach. You have to get this man so he can come to my location in Caesarea Maritima. Okay, so that's what Cornelius is explaining to his 2 household servants and also one of his Roman officers, okay, who was a soldier. Okay, this is what he's explaining to these 3 men to meet Peter, the disciple, in Joppa territory near the Mediterranean Sea location. Okay, Acts chapter 10, verse 9. On the morrow, as they went on their journey and drew nigh unto the city, Peter went up upon the housetop to pray about the 6th hour. So again, as you can see, Israel, on the morrow, it says the next day. That's what it said, on the morrow. That means the next day. It said, as they went on their journey and drew nigh unto the city. So now they're going on their journey, and it's almost approaching nighttime towards the city to see Peter that was living in Joppa. They're coming on a journey from Caesarea Maritima to go down to Joppa, okay, to see Peter, the disciple. Okay, and Peter went up upon the housetop to pray about the 6th hour. It says Peter went up upon the housetop. So Peter now is getting on the second level understanding on top of the rooftop of Simon the Tanner's house to pray to the Most High. And it says to pray about the 6th hour. When it says the 6th hour, that's talking about 12 p.m. hours. Okay, so basically that's around noontime. So Peter is praying to the Most High around noontime hours. Okay, on top of Simon the Tanner's house, because Peter is just visiting and living amongst Simon Tanner and also preaching to people that's in Joppa location about Yahshua the Mashiach ministry understanding. Okay, Peter is promoting the Black Messiah ministry to his people who are the Hebrew Israelites living in this particular area in Joppa. Okay, and also we have Cornelius, Roman soldier officer, and we also have Cornelius, 2 household servants going on a journey to meet Peter in Joppa location. Okay, so this is what is getting into Israel. So other than that, Israel, this concludes part 2 lesson of Cornelius was a Hebrew Israelite understanding. And we just had to break down his understanding that the Most High sent a holy angel to speak with Cornelius because Cornelius was a Hebrew Israelite. And Yahweh recognized Cornelius as a righteous man that was keeping his commandments, that believed the Hebrew truth, and also was a righteous man that gave to the poor and needy, right? He was not a selfish spirit, and his righteousness or his righteous deeds was recognized by the Most High as a memorial. So the Most High is going to give unto him a blessing of understanding. Okay, so that's why he wanted Peter. That's why the Most High wanted Peter to give him the understanding what he needed to know. So that's why he sent the holy angel to speak with Cornelius to now get Peter to now come to Caesarea Maritima to speak with Cornelius in person. Okay, because Yahweh deals with the righteous. So Yahweh had a relationship understanding with Cornelius for him to be able to send a holy angel down to speak with this man. We learned the history of an actual tanner profession, which goes into dealing with dead animals and also making leather clothing with the dead animal skin, which is basically an unclean profession. But Yahweh looks at the heart of man. Yahshua the Mashiach looks at the heart of man versus necessarily the profession. Other than that, Israel, hopefully you enjoyed this lesson. Stay tuned for part 3 lesson on Cornelius was a Hebrew Israelite, part 3. Stay tuned for that lesson, Israel. Other than that, shalom.